So Time+Tide is entering its next frontier in the Discovery Studio. Speaking of the frontier, I'm here with Jørn, and we're going to be looking at Linde Werdelin, who is one of a few select esteemed brands here in our Discovery Studio frontier. Let's get into it. So, of course, the theme of today is the frontier. So, Jørn, I want you to describe what is the frontier of Linde Werdelin's watchmaking?
I think it's always been the adherence to a certain style of construction and of design, and I think most people that knows about Linde Werdelin, they recognize the two cases that we generally have, namely the SpidoLite, which is the skeletonized version, and also the Oktopus, which is very much the same DNA. But obviously it's a full case, and it's because we belong in two universes. One which is going up, which is anti-gravity, and it stems back from right at the beginning when we decided we wanted to make watches and instruments for skiing, mountaineering, and for diving. So the construction of the two cases were very much impacted by those two universes, and still are.
And so paint me that picture in terms of like the nature of the frontier. Like, where do you envision these watches being worn in their sort of living their best life?
Well, it is very, we think about the strength of everything, the strength of the movements, the strength of the cases, the strength of between the case and the strap, so that we want our watches to be able to be used, climbing in mountains, diving deep, being in sols, being in low, high temperature. And one of the reasons that I personally prefer rubber straps is because they're very easy to take your watch off and you rinse it in cold water and it's clean.
Yeah, no, that's...
So it is very much a sports piece.
And as a sort of a quick sidebar here, what is the most extreme setting or frontier you've personally taken one of these watches in?
Well, I mean, I have always loved skiing and climbing. So I've been to, most mountains in Europe, even some in Turkey, some in Canada, with the watches. And obviously it can be very cold and keep very rocket because you are rock against yourself when you're climbing across, a ridge. And I mean, I haven't taken them particularly deep in the sea, but I've taken them down to say 50 meters or something, which in the scheme of things is not really a lot how deep you can actually take a watch. And
well, it's deeper than most desk drawers, so you've
also,
done better than most.
Yeah, no, listen, and you can't really see much down there anyway. It's deep, right? But the original Oktopus 1, we made a couple of versions that were waterproof until 1111 meters. And that was also a play on numbers, but more than that, right?
So, I mean, we've touched on it a little bit here, but let's dig a little deeper. So, with the watches we have here on the table, how do these watches best exhibit these characteristics of the frontier that you're occupying?
Well, I think it does come back to the skeletonization of the case, and that was to reduce weight. Right, so because obviously when you climb, and we had this back in 2007, we were involved in a film about climbing Everest back in 1923 by a British guy, and the team came back and they thought the original biphometer, as it was then called, was too heavy, so they left it at base camp, which was very much to our disappointment. So Morten got this idea: why don't we start taking away material? And it was a very complicated process because it was not only taking away material, but it was also completely redesigning and reconstructing the case into something where we could actually, polish, satinize, and finish it in different ways. And with these angles, that is very complicated. A brown watch is a lot easier to handle, but it has very much to do with that universe of going up into the mountains and weight reduction. When we subsequently did the Oktopus, we thought that it's about keeping life inside, and a movement is to a large extent life. Yeah. And then have a case that we could kind of attach on the side, but to safeguard that life, and also to use materials that are highly anti-corrosive. Because you leave salt on a lot of materials, it will disintegrate.
Yeah. And so for the viewers who are not necessarily super familiar with your brand just yet, but we hope you get more and more familiar, give me a sense of the dimensions that we're working with here. What's the size of both the SpidoLite and the Oktopus?
I think what I want to say is that people generally look at them and say, oh, that's a big watch. But then when they put them on the wrist, it feels like a smaller watch.
They're very ergonomic.
Yeah, they are ergonomic, they're easy to wear, they're light, and they're shaped to the wrist. And obviously because we have this with the case going out to the strap, it just feels like, but we're talking about here about 49, we're talking about 47, width. But when you look at only the bezel and the central watch, it's much more like, I would say between 42 or 44 mil.
Yeah, it's like when I look at the weather app and it says it's 70 degrees outside, but it feels like 68.
Well, you know what? Yeah, very much so, right? And to that point, because the Oktopus 3 that we will come out with in the third quarter this year, we have made it thinner. We have made it slightly narrower, and that was not necessarily the point of it, but we had to relook at it and said, well, we don't have the instruments that we originally had to put onto the watches. So what makes sense from also the point of view of the crown, how much do we want on the side? Do we really need it to be 15 mil and not 13, so on and so forth, right? So I think it's always a lot of consideration about the very, very small things that people may not immediately appreciate when they first look at a watch.
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. And, as a brand, this wasn't just started yesterday. Some of the micro brands and indies that we work with are really quite young, but it's been some time that Linde Werdelin's been around. What has been sort of the highest peak or the highest sort of memory or moment for you in your journey with the brand?
Yeah, well, I think one of the high points were in 2009 when we went to Basel, and we had made the first SpidoLite, and we got this idea that we would partner with Sven Andersen about him making a movement and put inside that watch. And we realized we had to move somewhere in terms of, kind of horological capability or, what is inside the watch rather than just an ETA movement that we used then. And we made 44 pieces. It was priced a lot higher than we initially did, but we had to with what we had done to it. And people just came and they looked at that watch. That was the only thing they looked at. And then we knew, okay, this is something we need to focus on. We kind of had that, okay, it's titanium, it's light, it's skeletonized. We have a watch here that we need to build, the future on. And that then made the Oktopus because we could see, okay, we have this watch, now we need the opposites for going down versus going up.
Yeah.
So I think that was very much a high peak. But having said all this, I think there was we grew, tremendously for, a lot of years. It felt very good until the point where we had more than 60 retail partners in 30 countries. Then the world changed. Pre-owned came very much to the fore, which is very much still is. And we realized that the world looked different, so we had to change. And so for a very long time, we have done our business in a direct, and we also got to learn the customer a lot better because we didn't have the distributor, the retailer, so we, originally we never really spoke to our client, but having changed that, now we speak a lot to our client, and I think we much better understand. But I have many highlights when I meet someone and they own our watches. We met a good client last summer, who we didn't know was such a good client, but it turned out he owns more than 20 pre-owned pieces.
Wow.
And we just never talked to him, and it was very weird, and he's a fantastic guy. And we met with him again a couple of months ago in Switzerland, and he also just bought 2 of our limited edition on order because he said, okay, well, I need one in bronze, I need one in titanium. They're exactly the same watch, but just 2 different materials. And that's great.
That's great. That's when somebody's really connecting with that visual identity and DNA of the brand. But look, one of the things, Andrew, of course, he founded this business. He's very much into watches, but his original love is music. Yep. And so whenever we're posting reels of watches, curating that music, curating the backtrack, it's a very touchy thing. You got to make sure you pick the right music, or you're going to really hear from Andrew. So what I want to know from you,
Okay.
as the person who built this frontier, this new brand, what is the soundtrack when we post these watches on our Instagram? What is the soundtrack you envision? What's the one track you think most exhibits what your watches are and what they're about?
So, I mean, I can't really pick a tune. We talked about this a
It's
little
tough.
earlier because I mean I've listened to a lot of different music over the years, and my music taste changes. So I would say right at this moment, I think you should play some Blank and Jones.
Okay.
And it can really be anything of that.
Okay.
And I say that because I enjoy listening to it for the moment. And one of my daughters, she comes in to me on a Friday night and said, "Dad, should we put some music on?" And I said, "Well, what would you like to have on?" I say, "I really like, I think it's number 15, I can't remember, of the compilations." And then we put that on and she's happy.
Okay. Well, guys, look, you definitely have to come to the Time+Tide New York City Discovery Studio. Come up here into this frontier, into the loft, to discover brands just like Linde Werdelin. But for a limited time, we will be selling these watches online. So definitely head to the timetideshop.com. Full details will be in the description below. Jørn, thank you so much.
Thank you, Zach.
As always,
Thank you.
I'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.